All right, so factoring's come back to haunt you. If you still haven't learned how to factor, you really need to go back. I did a couple of videos on factoring and different types of factoring and different methods. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on factoring here today, so you'll have to go back and learn it. So again, keep in mind what we're trying to figure out is where's the parabola crossing the x-axis. It works great graphing if the answer is an integer, but if we're talking about a decimal or a fraction, it doesn't work so great. So we have to have an algebraic way of doing it. So if you remember, zero product property, Mr. McGrath likes to call it ZPP. The zero product property is what we're going to use once we factor to find the solutions, the zeros, the roots, okay? The zero product property says if A times B equals 0, then either A or B must equal 0. Okay? Zero product property. Okay, so then I gave you, on the note packet, I gave you how to do it. So factoring, choose the method. The first thing is, if we're factoring, I'm just going to do a quick review. Number 1, the equation must equal 0. Be careful of that. If you try to solve it without equaling it to 0, that's not going to work. It must equal 0 in order to use the zero product property. Then remember, the next thing is always to look for the greatest common factor. If there is one, you want to factor that out first before you go into your method. Okay? Then remember, magic X is next. Everybody, no matter what you use, you're going to use the magic X. Sometimes, if your lead coefficient is 1, you can stop at the magic X. If your lead coefficient is 1, the magic X will give you what you need, okay? Then, if your lead coefficient is not 1, you need to go to your chosen method. One of the things I hate is when I come around to help you with factoring and I say, what's your chosen method? And you say, I don't need one. That's not true. You need a chosen method. Either the box method, the grouping method, or the trash method. Now, if there's a different method that you learned from a tutor or YouTube or whatever, that's fine too. These just happen to be the 3 major ones that we use here. Pretty much all methods fall into these. We just call them by these names. Teachers who come here from other schools are like, what the heck is the box method? And then they see it and they have a different name. So kind of up to you. And then your final step is zero product property. So let's do a bunch of these. All right. Like I said, I'm not spending a lot of time teaching factoring here. If you need that, I got to go back and look what chapter it was. I did a video for each thing. I did a video for the magic X. I did a video for greatest common factor. And then I did for each method, I did a different video so that you don't have to watch them all. But if you don't know how to do that, I have them for you, okay? So here's the first one. X squared minus 11x plus 19 equals negative 5. Okay, the first thing I notice is my lead coefficient is 1. So this is not, I'm not going to need a method. I can just use magic X. The second thing I notice, it's not equal to 0. So I'm going to add 5 to each side to make this equal to 0. If it's not equal to 0, you have to get it there. So x squared minus 11x plus 24 equals 0. So as a reminder on your magic X, up here is a times c. At the bottom is b. A times c here is going to be 24. And down here is negative 11. And again, because the lead coefficient is 1, we can go right to our groups and we don't have to worry about using a chosen method. So I did this one already. So 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. Negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. Add them together, negative 11. So then we have, here's our factors. X minus 8, x minus 3. Now it's time for your zero product property. And this is where you have to be careful and you need to do the steps because I've seen too many people try to shortcut this and then they get all the way down here and they get it wrong. So you're going to take this factor and set it equal to 0. Then you're going to take this factor and set it equal to 0 and solve. So either x is 8 or x is 3. So this crosses the x-axis twice at 8 and 3. Okay, let's look at number 2. 6x squared minus 13x plus 3 equals negative 3. First thing I noticed, not equal to 0. So I add 3 to both sides. So now I go 6x minus 13x plus 6 is 0. Magic x. Up here is 36. Down here is negative 13. This one's negative 9 and negative 4, because negative 9 times negative 4 is positive 36. Add the two together is negative 13. Now here's your chosen method. I'm not going to do this with you. Like I said, if you don't know how to factor, you need to go back. You need to come see me to get some practice, or you need to go back and watch the videos. So I'm just going to go right to my factors. 2x minus 3 and 3x minus 2. Again, the order doesn't matter. Okay? And I use grouping because that's my favorite method, but I'm not going to go through all the methods with you. Again, ZPP, zero product property, says, well, each one has to be equal to 0. And so I separate them out and I set them equal to 0, and then I solve them. So, and these are where you need to be really careful. I add 3 to both sides, and then I divide both sides by 2. So x equals 3 halves. I do not want the decimal. Add 2 to both sides on this one. So 3x equals 2. Divide by 3. And so the two places it's going to cross the x-axis, which will be hard to tell in the graph, is 1.5 and 2/3. Okay? Again, it's up to you how much you want to keep watching, but I'm going to do another example. 5x squared minus 44x plus 120. And this one's going to be a little bit more difficult. Minus 30 plus 11x. So we have too much on the one side. I'm going to draw a line on this one. So I'm going to add 30 to both sides, making sure I line it up with like terms. 120 and 30 go together. And then I'm going to subtract 11x from both sides. Okay, so then I have 5x squared minus 55x plus 150, and I'm hoping you notice right away that's all divisible by 5. So you want to take out your GCF now. Okay, so my GCF is 5, so now I'm left with x squared minus 11x plus 15. This is going to be much easier to do because I have a lead coefficient now of 1, so all I need is my magic x. So I put my 15, my negative 11, and this one, not 15. This should be 30 here, sorry. I was like, I did this one before. This should be 30. And you guys probably noticed that, and nobody's here to yell at me, so that's why I missed it. So this should be 30 here. And so that's going to be negative 5 and negative 6. So our 5 on the outside isn't really going to matter because we can divide both sides by that. So we have x minus 5 and x minus 6. Again, we don't need a method here because the lead coefficient, the number in front of the x squared, is 1. Zero product property. X minus 5 equals 0. X minus 6 equals 0. So we add 5 to both sides. X equals 5. Add 6 to each side. X equals 6. Okay? All right. Now, that's factoring. You have to go the other way. So that's the other part of this lesson. If I give you two roots, you have to be able to write an equation in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. You may not, there are no fractions or decimals in these answers. And I can always tell when people haven't paid attention all the way because they give me fraction or decimal answers, and you can't give me that, okay? So here's what I would do. I say, well, here's our answer. So this time you're going to start with, I know that my parabola is crossing the x-axis at negative 2 and 6. So we're going to work backwards. So now we need these both to be equal to 0. So we can do the zero product property backwards. So we're going to go backwards and set them both equal to 0. Oops, I don't need the parenthesis yet. Okay, now we bring them together and do x plus 2 and x minus 6 equals 0. So you can see we're doing exact opposite of what we just did. And then we FOIL. So the opposite of factoring is foiling or box method here. So this would be x squared plus 2x minus 6x minus 12. And so my final answer is x squared minus 4x minus 12 equals 0. So we're working the opposite way. Okay? Now, people get all upset when they get, okay, what if the answers are fractions? This is actually pretty easy if you listen to what I'm saying. We're going to clear the fraction first. Well, how do I get rid of a 3 in the denominator? If I have a 3 in the denominator, if I multiply it by 3 over 1, the 3's will cancel out. But whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So this is a quick, easy way of taking care of your fraction. And again, remember, we're working backwards, so we want it equal to 0. So we're just going to add 2 to both sides. So now we have 3x plus 2 is equal to 0. See, it's not overly complicated. You just got to think about it for a minute. So in this one, we need to clear the fraction by multiplying both sides by 4. So 4x, the 4's cancel out, equals 3. In order to use zero product property, it needs to be equal to 0, so we subtract 3. So now we have 4x minus 3 equals 0. Bring them together, and we do 3x plus 2, and then 4x minus 3. And now we multiply. You can't leave it this way. We have to get it to ax squared plus bx plus c. So we have to FOIL or box. So what you end up with is 12x squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. So you either FOIL, I'm not going to do this step on this one, or you box it right here. This is how I got from here to here. Okay. One more. This is a tricky one, and that's why I wanted to do it. X equals 0 and x equals negative 3/5. Well, this first one here, x is already equal to 0, so there's nothing I need to do. And then the other one, I need to clear my fraction, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. So 5x equals negative 3. Add 3 to both sides. So 5x minus 3 equals 0. And over here, we already have x equals 0. So let's bring it together. X is my first factor, and then 5x minus 3 is my other factor. So in this one, we just need to distribute. So it's 5x squared minus 3x equals 0. Well, some people are going to say, well, that's not ax squared plus bx plus c. Well, c is 0 in this case. So we don't need to write it. And so that's my final answer for that one. Okay, it takes a little practice, but if you do a couple of these on your homework, you'll see that I think these are easier because you don't have to worry about having a method for factoring.